I'd like to talk to you about a lecture that I heard from a professor at Ryerson University that I heard several years ago at a conference. And what he was talking about was how the university had decided that they wanted to become more livable for their students living on campus, but also for the people who lived in their surrounding community. First thing that he pointed out was that Ryerson University, unlike most other university campuses, is extremely compact in design. This is Ryerson right here. If you know Yonge and Dundas in Toronto, that's the corner right there. And this is a university campus. And what he pointed out was that if you were to take a toonie and throw it down in the middle of the campus, more than likely anybody who's within view of that toonie would likely be somebody who does not go to school at Ryerson. This is the complete opposite of what you would experience at almost any other Canadian university. Take, for instance, University of Waterloo. This is the University of Waterloo, covering blocks and blocks and blocks of the city of Waterloo. And if you were to throw down a toonie anywhere on that campus, more than likely the vast majority of people who would be within eyesight of that toonie would be a university student. Very little of the public is on the university campus at at most any university in Canada. So, in other words, space is extremely precious on campus. There's not a lot of space. What they need, what they have to use um, very carefully. And moreover, it's a shared space. Whatever they do on campus is going to be impacting the local community also. Whereas, a University of Waterloo or a Trent University, whatever they do on campus, more than likely doesn't have much of an impact on the local community. So, what were they going to do? Well, the first thing that you felt very passionate about, seeing that they're a school of architecture, is they were going to stop making ugly buildings. And if you take a look at this older style building on campus, the big box of concrete was a typical design of most buildings in downtown Toronto, and the university just sort of fell into line with it. And you can see not only is this a very dull looking design, but as we go down the street here, um, there's the university just to the side here. But as you go down here, take a look at this building to the right. Talk about completely uninspiring. Just a big wall of bricks and not a very attractive design whatsoever. So they decided that any new structure that's going to go up is going to be extremely expensive. But what they wanted to make sure was that it was a world class design. Anything they were going to make, um, it's in within spitting distance of the um, busiest intersection in all of Canada, which is Dundas Square. So let's start making world class buildings on their campus and hopefully inspire those developers in the surrounding area to do the same. So sometimes they built new buildings, and other times they rebuilt or redesigned existing buildings. So here's an example of one of their redesigned buildings on campus, which is quite an innovative design that they've used here. They also, when they purchase old buildings, wouldn't simply just tear them down, but instead would redesign the interior space and make sure that the historical elements of the building were kept. So I know myself growing up, Maple Leaf Gardens was this big shrine to hockey in Toronto. That's where the Toronto Maple Leafs played for decades and decades and decades. The idea of tearing down the Maple Leaf Gardens is just an unacceptable idea. Um, but Ryerson purchased the property and decided to do a couple of different things. First of all, they freed up some commercial space in the bottom here for the Loblaws, but for the upstairs, they divided the excuse me the arena into two parts. So the top part became their basketball court, and the bottom part where the original rink was they kept for hockey, and then of course built in a whole bunch of other athletic facilities within it. So here we have a historical building that they preserved, but made it into useful space for not only themselves, but the facilities are also available to the public. They wanted to make sure that the space on campus, if you go back and take a look, we've got this outer shell of buildings, but the interior space here, we've got a fair bit of open space. And then we also have the street going through here. And what they wanted to make sure was that that the interior space was meant for people. So you can see here they blocked off that street and made it difficult for cars to go down here. They've put in lots of bike areas so that you can lock up your bike. And this is primarily a pedestrian area. You can see that they've also encouraged local cafes to set up outside, and they have this little market, and you can see this beautiful reflecting pool right in the middle of their campus. So a really nice design that's inviting for people, designed for people, and not for cars. That reflecting pool area, this is it at night, freezes. Well, they freeze it during the winter, and they turn it into to a skating area, which is another great aspect of the design. Finally, the last thing is to design the campus so that it felt safer. Students in general feel safe on campus during the daytime, but in the past they felt that certain aspects of the campus didn't feel so safe. And what they found out was the areas that they felt unsafe were the areas that didn't have a lot of foot traffic during the evening. Now, if you go back to that um, space we were looking at before, if you look at this at nighttime, you can just imagine this is not a very welcoming area. First of all, as soon as you start walking down this section here, there's very few places for you to duck into to if you're not feeling very safe, all of this is sort of barricaded off, and it's sort of just a big gigantic wall on the one side. And a lot of people are going to avoid this part of the school because there wouldn't be any reason to be walking along this street at nighttime. So this design, they realized, didn't make people feel safe. So what they realized is they needed to, whenever they built a new building or redesigned an existing building, is to not make this wall kind of feature, but instead this kind of feature. So the university is using all of the top stories of this building, but you can see that the bottom story, they've opened up to commercial interest, just like they did with Maple Leaf Gardens. They've opened up the bottom portion of the building for commercial purposes. So this does a couple of things. First of all, it creates more foot traffic throughout the day. You're going to get people that are going to be going to restaurants and shops and so on at all hours, and that increased foot traffic increases the feeling of being safe. In addition, it also creates a better living atmosphere for the people on campus in that, first of all, the Loblaws being close by. Having a local grocery store is really important for students who are on a limited budget. And we also want these shops around and so on. So there's, things that you can pick up close by instead of having to walk long distances. Now, there's a whole bunch of environmental interior designs that they and architectural designs that they made for the interior parts of these buildings that I'm not as familiar with, and I'm not going to discuss. But suffice to say, um, it's not just the outside that they focused on, but they also did a lot to improve the interior design of these buildings to make them healthier and more environmentally friendly. But I thought I'd just give you a slice of what a sustainable, livable community looks like when you have the ability to sort of control a part of the city and influence the design of that. If you're interested in learning more, you might want to consider studying at Ryerson University. They have a variety of different sustainability programs there. One of them is sustainability in architecture. And there's this great video that I've posted about how Ryerson students won an international award for creating what's it called, a zero house, which generates as much energy as it consumes.